All right, hello and welcome to another basics cooking class. My name is Sam Maggi. I'm a chef and culinary mentor here at Basics Market. And tonight I'm very happy to bring you a recipe for jambalaya. Um, Fat Tuesday is coming up, Mardi Gras. It's Tuesday the 16th this year, 2021. So this is a great dish to celebrate Mardi Gras. Jambalaya is one of the more known dishes of Louisiana and definitely originated in New Orleans. There's a couple versions of the jambalaya style. What we're looking at here is the Creole version, and so we actually made up our own Creole seasoning. And if you have the basics recipe, or you can of course look online at our website and find the recipe here for the jambalaya, or we have these recipe cards, not quite this size, but a little smaller in the stores like this, and you can pick one of those. See, I said I wouldn't knock stuff over, and I did. But you can pick these up in our stores. And get the recipe that way. And then we are going to attach the recipe for the Creole seasoning um, to the jambalaya recipe. And so that's a good thing to have on hand. And you can see it makes enough for several batches. And this is really good for a blackening spice as well. If you want to blacken fish or blacken chicken, this is the seasoning you want for that. So back to the jambalaya, you've got the Creole version has tomatoes, and then the Cajun version has no tomatoes. And jambalaya came about with the Spanish settling in Louisiana, and they were there until 1800, and that's when the French took over. So what happened is Spanish immigrants were looking for a way to make paella, and um, and they couldn't find saffron. So instead, they looked to the tomato, which is a Native American plant, right? And they're able to get the color, and then it added another flavor dimension. But we'll talk a little more about the history because there are other influences in this dish, which makes it just a great American kind of mix of culture in this dish. But let's just start thinking about like it in that context of a paella type dish, because that's the technique we're looking at here. So the first thing we're going to do is heat up a skillet, and we're heating it up on medium high heat here. And I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil, a tablespoon or so. And we're going to heat that up. And while that's heating, I'm going to go ahead and grab my chicken thighs. So here I have 3 chicken thighs, and these are our nice Aurora Valley organic chicken that we grow ourselves here at Basics. These are free range. They're local. They're from where I'm standing now. They're right down the street in the Willamette Valley, and they're always really fresh. And you can find them at our butcher shops in the markets at 5 locations around the Portland area. All right, so I am going to go ahead and trim up these chicken thighs. So these are boneless, skinless chicken thigh, and this is a good opportunity just to kind of clean them up a bit. I think our recipe states, to split them, and that can be difficult, like with a chicken thigh, because you can see it has a lot of different dimensions here. So generally with this step, I'm just going to be cleaning it up a bit, and and then looking to cut it into some smaller pieces. Usually a chicken thigh will have sort of a thicker side and a thinner side. So, the thinner side, I'm just going to leave alone and maybe cut it into a couple smaller pieces. And then the thicker, I might split it a bit. And again, you just, when you're splitting chicken, you just want to put your palm down on the top and cut across carefully underneath. In this way, you can safely split the thigh a little bit. And so I'm just splitting that one side. And then, depending on how many people you're feeding, this recipe is slated for 6 servings. But you could probably get more servings by adding more stuff, or you could cut the chicken up in many pieces. And that's one of the really neat things about the jambalaya is, there's countless versions of this, and it's really kind of dependent on the environment that you're making it in. As far as, again, back to that Cajun versus Creole part. Another part of that is the Cajun version. There just weren't tomatoes outside of the city so much in the early days, and so the Cajun people would use stuff they find in their environment. So you'll see it much more aquatic. You've got alligators, and you've got frog legs and stuff in it, and that's the thing is the jambalaya is a mixture. You usually have kind of a sausagey type thing, and that's a German immigrant influence, right? Is the sausage, and then you have a seafood type element, and here we're using shrimp, and then you have the poultry, which could be duck, could be turkey, and very commonly it's chicken. So that's what we're using here. So I'm grabbing a bowl, and I'm just going to put these chicken pieces in there, and then we're going to season them with Creole seasoning. So here I have half a tablespoon of the seasoning. I split a tablespoon in half. So I'm ready to go here. And as per usual, I try to have my mise en place set up, right? Mise en place simply meaning everything in its place. So I do have things ready at hand here. So I pre-measured my paprika, my Creole seasoning, and my pepper. This recipe is a little bit unique and really nice in the sense that we're doing it in stages, and these stages are set up so that at the end you get the shrimp aren't overcooked and your vegetables aren't overcooked. Traditionally, in a lot of jambalaya recipes, you'll just put everything in the pot at once, let it cook, but then you end up like things cook at different rates, and that's an important thing to keep in mind with any dish. But a dish like this where you're layering ingredients, you want to think about the rate at which they cook and as to when you add them into the dish. So this recipe is set up in 3 stages to allow the optimum cooking for each ingredient. So at this stage, you're going to get hit by some spicy stuff. And so if I start talking, that's what's happening. You can tell it's good and spicy, right? So we're going to toss this around a little bit, and we just want to brown that chicken off nice on all sides, and it'll take 2 or 3 minutes. So another thing about this staging is it allows you time in between each stage to prep for the next thing. So I've got my mise en place, so to speak. I've got my onion, garlic, thyme, and bell peppers, celery. They're all ready to go. But I know that I'm going to have time to cut those in between the stages where this is going in the oven. So I'm using a skillet, a 10-inch skillet, which works great for this recipe and these amounts. You want a skillet with a lid, or you can use a Dutch oven. And Dutch oven is nice just because it gives you a little more room to maneuver in there. But this formula works great in a 10-inch skillet. So Dutch oven with a lid, a 10-inch skillet with a lid. Anything that you can fit this in and pop it in the oven is great. And so, yeah, back to kind of how this recipe grew. So you're looking at the Spanish influence with the paella, and then also Louisiana has then the French come in, right? And the word jambalaya actually can be traced back to the French Provençal word like jabon or something like this, which is a rice dish, which is baked. So we see that. There's also there's also a theory about a Native American influence. There's a Native American rice dish that had a similar etymology as well. But and so that could work into it. And then what the French brought to this also, when the French settled in Louisiana, they'd been exploring the Caribbean. And so they brought a lot of that influence to the dish. And then, of course, the African influence in Louisiana cuisine is very strong, and we can see that in this dish, and that would come through via the Caribbean also. But there, our three dishes, our three most known dishes from Louisiana, we have gumbo, etouffee, and jambalaya. And so, like gumbo is the African word for okra, and I believe okra actually did originate in Africa, and the Africans brought it to Louisiana, and it's become a really popular dish throughout the South. Okay, so this stuff is browned off nice. This is the chicken thigh, and beautiful organic chicken. Also, this chicken is fed all organic feed that we grow and manufacture ourselves. So it's really a nice bird to try. So the purpose of browning the chicken first, even though it's not going to go into the dish for a minute, is to season the pan. So now we have all that nice Creole seasoning in there. We have some oil and we have some fat off of the chicken itself. So that gives us a nice base to put our cup of rice in, and that's what I have here. And I'm using jasmine rice. I think our recipe said you can use brown rice also, and brown rice will work well for you here. I'd recommend a long grain brown rice. And with brown rice, you're going to want to give it a little bit of a longer cooking time. A jasmine rice or other long grain rice will work well for you in this instance. All right, so with rice, I always like to give it a little bit of a rinse. I'm going to just put it in the strainer and rinse it very quickly. So I'm still here, I'm just giving it a rinse. And what I'm doing is rinsing, just getting some of that starch, getting the starch out of it. And this is an important step with this recipe, and recipes like this, where you're baking the rice, because you don't want a lot of starch in there. You want kind of gumming it up. You want the rice to kind of be able to have some separation in the end, right? Okay. Woo. It is spicy, all right. Okay. So we're gonna sizzle that rice, and then we're going to go ahead. Well, I guess I forgot one thing, right? We forgot. I got ahead of myself. We're going to want to cook the onion, put the onion and the garlic and so forth in there. So let's do that. I got carried away with the exciting history of jambalaya. So let's go ahead and throw this onion in there. We've got an onion. And so as always, we're going to cut off the top end and then cut right through the middle of the root end and peel it. And then we're going to give it a little dice. We're going for a larger dice here with everything. You know, and again, you can, that's a personal preference, but it does look really pretty, kind of having a larger dice here on this dish. That's what we're going to go towards a 1-inch dice. And it's always fun to do a larger dice because it's pretty relaxed, right? You just knock it out quickly and pop it on in there. And it's okay to have that rice in there. It's not going to hurt anything. All right. So all around, and then this is a great technique for the onion because you're just left with that little root in there. All right. So we got the onion, and then we're going to put a couple teaspoons of garlic. I'm going to add just a little more olive oil because I lost some of my oil to that premature rice. And then with the garlic, I always like to show the garlic trick. And garlic, you can put it in a little bit of warm water and just drop your cloves in there. And generally, I think we're going for 2 teaspoons here. You know, 2 or 3 cloves should do the trick. I'm going to go for 3 because I really enjoy the garlic. But yeah, with dropping the garlic in the warm water, it facilitates the skin to come off without being so sticky. So it doesn't stick to your hands and to your knife and all that so much. And it can just be a couple minutes and it does the trick. So here's the 3 cloves of garlic. And this recipe is really neat because it just does have a few ingredients. But as I mentioned before, you know, you can add things you have on hand. It can be a good way to use up odds and ends of different meats and veggies. And a note on the veg here, we're using peppers, onions, and celery. And so in Creole and Cajun cuisine, you'll see this as the base for just about everything. And definitely those 3 dishes I mentioned earlier, the jambalaya, etouffee, and gumbo. And what we find is that's called the Holy Trinity in Creole and Cajun cooking. And so when you're adding the peppers, the onions, and the celery, it's often called putting in the pot. And it's also those 3 vegetables are also what make up sofrito, which is a base you'll find in a lot of Spanish cuisine. So again, it's referencing through the cuisine, it's referencing that Spanish history of Louisiana. And so in French cooking, in classic cuisine, you have the mirepoix, which is onions, carrots, and celery. And so this is the mirepoix of Creole cuisine. And we're adding the onions and the garlic early on here with the rice. And you know, and theoretically, I shouldn't have the rice in there yet, but we're doing an experiment, I guess. It should be fine. So at this point, you're going to put your bay leaves in. we're going to put in a little bit of thyme. So thyme is a really common ingredient in a lot of dishes, and it's a plant that grows really easily in your yard or your garden, and it grows prolifically, and so it's a good one to plant, and it goes all year round. So it's worth having a thyme plant in your yard or garden if you're able. Then you can harvest as much thyme as you like, and you can never have too much thyme, right? Especially when you're doing a cooking demo. All right, so here we go, and we've got a couple teaspoons of thyme we're putting in there, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add the paprika and the black pepper. So I have some nice, this is smoked paprika and some black pepper. There's smoked flavor. We're going to be using andouille sausage as well. So there's a little smoky background through the paprika and the sausage. And every, the paprika has a little bit of a bite to it as well. And then black pepper is, we underestimate sometimes the potency of black pepper, but black pepper can really give things a nice bite, right? And so this has a good teaspoon of black pepper, which will make it a little bit spicy as well. And once again, I'm probably going to cough a bit because we're dealing with some spicy stuff. All right, so now I've got the tomatoes. I'm just using a can of tomatoes. This is 14.5 ounces, the common size of a can of diced tomatoes, and that's just the amount you need. So 1 can of diced tomatoes, and that'll just go right in there. So we're going to cook the rice in the tomatoes and some broth. And so we're going to use 3 cups of chicken broth, and we're using low sodium. We're keeping the sodium kind of low on this, so we're using low sodium items here. So I just got some chicken broth, and I'm going to add 3 cups. 3 cups of broth, and then this is going to go into the oven. But the surprise here is we're actually just going to leave it on the stovetop because our oven in this kitchen is so loud, and we're kind of doing a mock walkthrough of this. So this dish will work fine on the stovetop too, if that's all you got, or a burner or a campfire, something like that. You can do this dish. That's one neat thing again about the jambalaya is it works. It's very resilient, and you can cook it almost anywhere. You could probably cook it on the engine of your car. We have a question.
Yeah, Chef Sam. Michelle asked, can we use dry thyme if we don't have fresh thyme? And I would ask, how do you change the amount that you use?
Yeah, so yes, you can use dried thyme, and I actually did that just on I want to say 3 batches ago. I made this, and we didn't have any thyme at that moment. We were out of thyme in the store, and so I had some dried thyme, and that works. It works well. Generally, with this, I'd go ahead and I'd still use a teaspoon. I mean, a lot of times with fresh herbs, you're going to kind of use less with the dried because it's concentrate. Um, but with time, it's so small anyway. In the first place, I think it's safe to kind of do just an equal measure from dried to dried and fresh, and time just tastes great, so it'll be good. So I'd say just still use a teaspoon, you'd be in good shape. All right, so now we have a good bubble going on, a simmer. Um, and so I'm going to go ahead and pop the lid on here. And well, that's simmering, and like I mentioned, this, can go in the oven at this point. And it's kind of nice to put something in the oven. In the oven, I should mention I would have preheated to 350 degrees. Um, and the advantage of putting it in the oven is then it's just, you don't really have to think about it. Put it in the oven, set a timer on the stove. You want to, you might, you want to kind of bring the temperature down after it gets going a bit. You don't want it to burn on the bottom, I guess is would be my main concern with that, but it's perfectly legit to do it on the stovetop as well. So as I mentioned, our rice is cooking. We have a few minutes to do some more prep. So we've got the bell peppers and the celery, and this might be a good opportunity to dice these up and have them ready to go in. Now these are going to go in at the very end. Before they go in, the second step stage, as I like to say with this, is the chicken, because the chicken isn't cooked through yet, right? It's just brown. And then we have our andouilles. So we're going to prepare the andouilles to pop in that pot as well. But meanwhile, I've got these nice bell peppers, and we have a red and a green. Traditionally, your Trinity will be a green bell pepper, but boy, the red sure looks pretty, and it gives a lovely sweet note to the dish. Um, between the tomato and the red bell, you have a little bit of sweetness added. So bell pepper, the way I like to get into a bell pepper is knock off the top just to where the cavity is open, and then the stem end, again, down to where the cavity is open, and then you've got your seed pod in there. And this is a great example of a dish where you can utilize all this, right? Because we're doing a dice and even a bit of a rough and large dice here. So we can utilize every inch of this bell pepper. And I'd always like to mention having a little bowl on your workspace for your veggie scraps. Your compost is a great idea. Okay, so I just diced up the top and the bottom, and then I can remove the seed pack here. And I like to just run my knife along one of those ribs, and then we can roll this out, and this is rolling out the red carpet to your jambalaya. So there we go. And now you just can get those ribs out. And this white stuff in here, it's just a little bit bitter. So it's a good idea to get that out. And then you've got this really easy to work with deal here. And again, large dice. So I'm going to go 3 across, I think, because this is a nice big bell pepper, and just very relaxing doing large dice, right? So there we go. There's the red.
Chef Sam, while you're dicing that pepper, there's a question about the sausage.
Okay.
Is it already cooked, or will you be cooking that as part of the recipe?
Good question. And yeah, the sausage is raw, and we're going to be cooking that as part of the recipe. So the raw sausage and that chicken is still really raw. It's been browned, but it's not cooked by any means. So the meat, so to speak, is going in that second stage, and so I think we're going to do pretty well here with this stovetop method because it's moving right along. I got it cranked at a medium high heat. And like I said, though, I am going to check. Just want to make sure the rice isn't sticking on the bottom. And it's doing well. So, you know, if you decide to do stovetop method, I think you'll be in good shape. Um, okay. Yeah. So the sausage is an andouille sausage, and that's a somewhat of a spicy sausage usually. And um, what happens when you put that raw sausage the into your jambalaya is it's going to season it a lot as well. So you want to choose a really good sausage, and I have an excellent sausage here made by one of my friends in the meat department, especially for this occasion. And you know, we have a great andouille recipe that we sell, and I know they have andouilles at the Sandy location right now. I can't speak for other locations, basics, but you know, ask them to make you some, and and maybe they will. They're often very accommodating, and I know they will if you give them a day's notice. You can go in to the butcher shops and ask for a sausage, and they're happy to put one together for you. Some sausage. And we are featuring this recipe this month, so I don't think I'll get in too much trouble by by sending everyone out to ask for andouille sausage. Um, but with this andouille, it's not overly spicy, so you know that your Creole seasoning has some spice, and then, as I mentioned, the paprika and the black pepper has some spice. So it's all these things are going to come together and give us different levels of spice and make for a really rich and interesting, you know, taste experience. Um, and so the andouille, you know, it's a nice balance, I think, this particular andouille recipe to just add a little bit of spice and give a nice savory flavor to the dish overall. Um, so there's our peppers, and then we've got celery. Um, and so the celery, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it. And I always like to point out a little bit of knife skills while we're in one of these sessions. And you know, I like to talk about how to grab the knife, thumb and forefinger on that blade, right before the handle, the top of the handle, and that's the balance point. And you find that balance point, and it just makes it's the ergonomics, right, of the blade. And then I'll kind of balance the knife with my remaining two fingers fit right onto the handle there. And and then this hand, we're employing the claw. And the claw is just a great way to keep your fingers out from under the blade of the knife, yet you're able to grip your material. Um, so those are just things to always keep in mind when you're cutting vegetables and anything else. And I am using this rocking motion, and so I have the tip of the knife is always touching the cutting board, and then I just rock through to dice these guys up.
Sam, we have another question.
Yes.
This time it's about paprika.
Oh, okay.
And can you use a smoked version of paprika?
Yeah, yes, and I believe that's what I've used here. And so smoked in this dish really works well because andouille has a bit of smoked flavor and has smoked paprika in it. And often andouilles will even be a smoked sausage. And so that's kind of part of the jambalaya flavor profile is that really nice kind of smoky background. And So yeah, smoked paprika is good if you, there's like a paprika like the Hungarian sharp paprika, which is super spicy, almost like a chili powder. And you know, if you want to go, if you want to add more heat, maybe add some of that into this. Let's see where we're at. Well, it's looking pretty nice. We've got, it's going to move this celery stock so we can kind of see what's going on here. Um, so the rice is absorbing all the juice we put in there, the tomato and the chicken stock. And it looks like I didn't mess it up too much by adding the rice first. Um, and yeah, we're bubbling right along. So I think we can look at our next step. Um, so let's see here. First, I'm going to go ahead and cut up the sausage. So we've got two links. And again, you know, if you are wanting to feed more people, just add more sausages and chicken and stuff. You could really build this up. And this dish actually really took off. The jambalaya took off in like the Great Depression. People ate a lot of jambalaya, and it was very popular because you did have, you know, and often it was just vegetables and rice, which, you know, you could do a veggie version of this. I've done vegan jambalayas with tempeh. It's really a great thing to put into jambalaya because it holds up well and has a nice bite. Or veggie sausages like a, you know, like a field roast sausage kind of deal is a good choice. If you were going to go for a vegetarian version, um, you know, it's great. But yeah, people in during the Great Depression really got into it. It's a very economical dish, and it's super fun to share, right? Um, and that's, you know, we're looking at Mardi Gras time here, so we want to share with our family at least, or within our safe bubble. So, all right. Yeah, this is, you know, I'm kind of enjoying doing this on the stove top because I can, you can see it progress. So I think this is working out well. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this under the deal here for a moment. So you can see how the liquid is almost all absorbed there. Um, you know, so this is about when I would be pulling it out of the oven. So we can pretend I pulled it out of the oven. And and I'm going to just put that sausage right in there, the raw link, which I cut into 4 or 5 pieces each. And again, if you're looking to spread this out amongst more people, you can cut your sausage smaller. You can, or you could, if it's just like, if you're just a couple of you eating it, you can you could just put 2 whole links in there, right? I think cutting the sausage though will help facilitate that the flavor coming out of it a little bit. It allows the flavors of the sausage to come out into the rice. And then we've got our chicken. And so the chicken, of course, was seasoned already, right? And but not cooked through, just browned. And so that goes right in there. And at this point, I call this the nestling coming to a theater near you. Um, and so we're just going to nestle that stuff in there and cover it up again and let it go for a few more minutes. So if we were using the oven, you know, we put this in, I believe, for 15 more minutes, according to our recipe. But you know, stovetop, I'm going to put it back to medium heat. And at this point, I'd probably go medium low because I did notice, as I mentioned before, I want to watch out about that bottom getting a little overdone. And I did get some spots in my skillet because I have it really cranked up. You know, because of the, you know, of the class, I want this to finish. So I probably wouldn't go that high if I were cooking this at home and had more time. And you want to kind of look at this point at a medium low. You want that rice to continue to absorb the liquids, and then now you want the chicken and the sausage to cook through. Okay, so we've got our chicken and our sausage in there, and I've got my mise en place of the of part 2/3 of the trinity here. I've got the bell pepper and the celery, and then I have my reserved half a tablespoon of Creole seasoning, and I have some shrimp. So these shrimp are really great shrimp. I was so happy with these. I got these again at the Sandy Basics, um, and they have them behind the counter there at the meat department. But these are shrimps from the Gulf of Mexico, and they just have really nice color and great flavor. So what I'd like to do with these is just kind of go through. I cleaned most of them. We're using about a dozen shrimp, um, and I cleaned most of them, but I left a couple just so we could kind of go over how to clean up a shrimp. So shrimp sometimes come, uh, shelled and deveined. These are not. The head is off, but otherwise they're whole. So with the shrimp, you grab their legs, and then the shell just pops off. Um, and you can make a decision here. Some people like to leave the little tail on there and it's like a handle. But if you have people who like to eat really hastily, they might run into trouble with that. So, you can pull the tail off and then you just carefully kind of grab the end. And sometimes part of the tail ends up in there, a little bit of meat, but usually most of it will come right out. And then you've got your shrimp that you need to devein, and this is an important step for cleaning it. And that's you can run a sharp paring knife carefully down the center, and you can kind of see where the vein starts, and the vein is the intestinal tract of the shrimp. So you really don't want to eat that. So we're just going to pull that right out. And then what I do is I rinse, after I've deveined, I rinse the shrimp again, because there can be some residual, goop in there. So it's good, and that's how you clean the shrimp. So you just find that there's a little hole on the top, right in the center. Just go down about halfway through and find that vein. It looks like we have another question.
Yeah, we have a question about shrimp while you're debating that one.
Yeah.
What does 16 to 20 count for shrimp mean?
Oh.
Is that a medium or a jumbo? Can you help explain?
Yeah, that's sort of a medium, and I mean you can see these are 16/20s, and that terminology, it means there's 16 or 20 shrimp to the pound. So that's how they sort the shrimp. So the lower the number, the larger the shrimp, and the higher the number, the smaller the shrimp. The shrimpier the shrimp. Um, so yeah, that's how that goes. I'm just gonna give these couple that I just deveined a little rinse real quick. Okay, so now we've got our shrimp ready to go. And so the shrimp and the bell pepper and celery are the last to go in. And this is simply so that we don't overcook this stuff, because so often in a dish like this, the vegetables will just turn to mush, and something delicate like the shrimp that doesn't need a really long cooking time compared to the chicken and sausage, which needs a little more time. You don't overcook that stuff. So this method is really beautiful in that you're staging things appropriately to their cooking time. All right, let's see how we're doing. Well, this looks great. So I'm going to go ahead and place the shrimp and the peppers on here. So what I think I'll do
Can
is,
you do that? Can you put the skillet
well, yeah,
under the,
yeah, that's what I was going to do, Mark. I have a really good director here today, and he's telling me to do good things. And but that's what I thought of. I'm going to go ahead and pull this skillet right over here, and then we can see what's going on because it's coming together, you know. So I don't know why I just looked up as if I'd be able to see something up there. Um, so the sausage is coming along, and you know, and of course, again, I'm rushing things a little bit because I would say the chicken and sausage could use a few more minutes. You really want to make sure that stuff is cooked through, and as as I always talk about, the old digital thermometer is a great way to check. And everyone should have one of these if you're cooking meat. You know, in poultry, you know, you can bring it up to that 165 for chicken. And in this case, a ground pork, we want also to go to about 165. So just for fun, I'll let you know this is at about, you know, 155 to 160. So it would be a few more minutes technically, but we, you know, we don't all want to wait around for TV food that you're never going to get to taste anyway, right? And so let's go ahead and move along. So what do you think? Let's put our peppers and our celery in first. And this is where it really takes off the jambalaya as far as visually, right? This is so pretty, and it looks well, looks like Mardi Gras, right? Um, so got the peppers and the celery, and you know, you can see it's very simple, and it's just a matter of the timing. But I haven't done a whole lot of work, right? It sort of takes care of itself, and I think that that's one of the you know, the appeals of this dish is it is really straightforward, but at the same time you get a really complex flavor out of it. Okay, and now for the shrimp, and I'm just going to sort of put those around um, and spread them around a bit. And also at this point where we have our second or half tablespoon from that split. And so I'm going to put some of that under the shrimp, and I'm also going to put some of that over the shrimp because I think it's nice to season the shrimp up a little bit with some of that. Um, I call it, you know, blackening spice or Creole seasoning. Um, so let's do that. And then we'll pop this back on the burner. And I do think I have a magic of television to show a final product. Okay, so this is it. This is the final stage. Put that in. Pop that back in. We're on. We're not in. We're on the burner or in the oven if you're using an oven.
not a question, but
Yeah,
there are people on the class that are saying that it makes great leftovers.
great leftovers. Yes, really good. The next day allows all those flavors to marry. You know, which it's always nice in a dish like this or in soups and things if you kind of let them sit and then the flavors marry. Um, well, let's see here. Let's pull out the final dish. I'm I'm it's kind of a it's kind of bittersweet. This is ending already. But let's see what we've got. Right. So I did this one in the oven. Well, what right before the class is finished. Um, and so
Chef, do you have recommendations for what people could use if they wanted a vegetarian version?
yes. Well, I think tempeh, and I actually have done this dish with tempeh, works well. And you can even season the tempeh with the same Creole seasoning, that you're going to make. And if you don't make the Creole seasoning, there are Creole seasonings available. Um, like Zatarain's, I think is that's a brand, and you see a lot. And but any Creole seasoning will work. It's fun to make your own though, and the recipe we're going to give you makes quite a bit. And you could, anyway, and tofu would work. It wouldn't hold up quite as well. So if I were using tempeh, I'd put it in early, like where I put in the sausage. If I were using tofu, I might hold back and put it in where I put in the shrimp because it's a little more delicate. Um, but either of those items, you could do a saute, like I did with the chicken, and get them a little bit crisp on the outside, get that seasoning worked in. So I would utilize the tofu or tempeh like that. And then another great option for vegetarian and even vegan version would be like a sausage, like a vegetarian sausage, and there is an andouille version of vegetarian sausage out there. So something like that would be great because then you'd still get like the flavor of the andouille to help season the dish a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and try a little bit. Let's see. A plate, and of course a bowl would be a good thing for this as well. Um, so yeah, I mean the definitely the difference between my stovetop version and again I'll say kind of rushed stovetop version is the bottom stuck a bit, the rice, but here in this oven version, no problem. The rice did not stick one bit. You can see I have a really nice, it's nice and clean down there. So that's something to think about for sure. But once again, if you do the stovetop, if you do decide to do this on the stovetop, just keep that heat nice and low. Give yourself a little more time with it. Okay, let's see. I thought I brought it myself. Oh yeah, I have a fork. Let's get into this. Very nice. You know, like I expected, there's plenty of depth of flavor. You have all those various seasonings. The heat is kind of warm to hot. A great dish. And again, this technique you can apply. We talked about vegetarian, right? And you could put in all kinds of ingredients in here to your liking. Um, it's a wonderful technique to know about, and again, sort of based off of paella and that marrying of French, Spanish, and German influence as well as African, and just a real mishmash, which jambalaya in the Provençal sense translates to. So thanks so much for joining me tonight. I really enjoyed making this, and now I'm going to enjoy eating it. And I hope you have fun, as much fun making it as I did. And please join me for our next class. You can find all these classes on our basics website. Um, And I think we have a question.
I have one final question. Someone asked if you'll be offering a knife skills class again.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I always like to work in knife skills is something, that I like to work into to all the classes, and I'm always working on myself. Um, and I would like to do more knife skills things and maybe do some, there's never enough time in a knife skills class to cover everything. And so we should do another one. Um, and of course, there is one posted online. And if you go to our website, go to classes and then class library, and we're putting these classes online. The first one we did was the knife skills. So there might be some stuff in there for you, and I'm sure we'll revisit that because that's a great subject. All right, well, like I said, visit the website. You probably are seeing some of our locations. We have 5 locations for the basics markets around Portland area. You're going to find all the ingredients you need there, and you can come say hi to me. I'm around at the markets and at the Sandy Market a lot. And please stop in if you'd like to say hi or have any more questions. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.